Now, you went public in the middle of a pandemic, and even more impressive, during a freeze on sports. What's it been like leading the company through this time?
It's been really interesting. It's when you think about early on as you start a business where you're going to go, you usually don't even think about going public. And if you do, you probably think about ringing the bell and kind of the typical setup, not, virtual bell ringings and, not seeing your employees for months at a time while you're going public. So it's been an unusual and, unexpected way that we did it. But overall, it's been really successful. We've been thrilled with the receptiveness that the market's had to us. Really, appreciative of all the people that have invested in us and believe in our vision and what we're going to hopefully be able to achieve. And for us, a lot of it comes down to just continuing to execute well, hoping that states continue to progress with legislation. I'm hoping Massachusetts will get something done in the near future because that obviously helps us continue to build our base here. And if we continue to execute well and good things happen on the legislative front, I think that things will take care of themselves on the financial side. And it's obviously distracting having a public stock price now, but trying not to watch it every day.
Now, so many of us are still working from home. Professional sports are just starting to restart, but slowly you've, in the meantime, come up with some creative options, like allowing people to bet on television shows like Top Chef. And I know if you had one for The Bachelor, our producers would probably win, just to put that out there. Tell us about some of these new options.
Well, really, as soon as we felt like we were able to get everybody, comfortable and productive working from home, everyone felt safe. Our immediate focus turned to how do we engage our customers without sports, and then how do we prepare for the return of sports? And it was really amazing to watch the team rally together. They put out 70, 80 different pools and fantasy games for things like, you mentioned Top Chef, Curb Your Enthusiasm, political debates, just all kinds of stuff. We've created simulated NFL games with partnership with EA Sports using the Madden NFL game to have computer versus computer simulations, and people are playing fantasy on those. And also we've seen sports like Korean baseball really take off from a fantasy perspective, and ping pong at one point was our number one sports betting sport. So it's been really cool to watch the team rally around that. They've enhanced our offerings. We now have streaming for things like ping pong and Bundesliga so that while people are betting on them, they can actually watch them. And then as sports started to, traditional sports, I should say, return. Oh, one other thing I forgot too, esports grew tremendously for us. So we really expanded that offering, adding a number of new esports leagues, which, it's something I'm very excited about because personally I am a big believer in esports and I think it's going to be a big part of our future.
So, how much will you have to pivot the business if professional sports don't return for the foreseeable future? Period of
We
time.
probably continue to do a lot of the same things that we were doing in the initial days of the pandemic. And my guess also is that I think, whether sports come back or not is less of a question of, if and more, which sports and when. So, right now, for example, I mentioned golf, NASCAR, UFC are still being played. I think those sports, other than maybe UFC, lend themselves fairly well to social distancing. And it might be a world where if there is some kind of setback, certain sports are being played and others aren't. But even if all sports were to go away again, I think we continue to focus in the same places that we focused on in the early days in the mid-March period of the pandemic: esports, TV shows, simulated sports, and things like that. And it might actually create an opportunity to innovate faster than we thought in those areas. So there could be a silver lining.
Now, is it possible for the economic downturn to spur more states to legalize sports betting and online casino games? Could that be a result of this?
Well, I think it's definitely a possibility. A lot of states' budgets are going to be in much worse shape than they were, and in terms of expected tax revenue versus budget. And I think that also, a lot of cost, probably new cost, has come about as well. So things like healthcare and safety protocols that need further investment. So, I do think there's a very plausible hypothesis that many states will be looking for new forms of revenue, and we're going to make it as easy for them as possible. Once they say yes, we'll launch and we'll start, providing tax revenue right away. So It'll depend on the state, but I think some states will see that as a very appealing way to avoid making some painful cuts to things like education programs that they don't want to have to make cuts to.